This video is one in a series of videos that is intended to aid trainers and handlers in the AKC sport of obedience. It is intended as an enhancement to training and an aid to understanding the sport's requirements. It is hoped that the viewer will better understand the regulations, procedures, and scoring associated with the sport by watching this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps get the word out, and you'll be notified of any new videos in the series. In this video, we will discuss the utility-directed jumping exercise. All utility exercises are performed off-leash. In order to master this exercise, it is important to understand the regulations. Reading the regulations may not answer all of your questions, so we recommend that you view this video and attend any judges panel discussion or regulation seminars that may be available to the handler or trainer. AKC Judges Education webinars and videos are an excellent resource as well. The principal features of this exercise are that the dog goes away from the handler to the opposite end of the ring, stop, jump as directed, and return as in the novice recall. In AKC Regulations, Chapter 5, Section 3, we are told that there are 40 points available for this exercise. The team must retain more than 50% of the points available in this exercise, or 20.5 points in order to qualify. For this video, we will refer to the Utility A class order of exercises. In Utility A, the exercises are always in the same order. In the Utility B class, there are 6 orders. The judge is to rotate the use of each order at subsequent events. In Utility A, the directed jumping exercise is the last exercise in the class. It follows the moving stand and examination exercise. When the handler is ready, the judge will issue his or her orders. The orders will be preceded by, "Are you ready?" a query. The judge's orders for this exercise are, "Send your dog," "Bar," or "High," "Finish," and then wrapped up with a statement, "Exercise finished." The ring in utility is approximately 40 feet wide by 50 feet long. It can be more narrow, but never less than 35 feet wide. The jumps are placed in the center of the ring, about 18 to 20 feet apart. Now we will watch the entire exercise as it's to be performed, and then we will break it down into procedure, scoring, and penalties.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Send your dog.
Go! Winston, sit!
Bar.
Jump!
Finish. Exercise finished.
Come around. Get close.
Are you ready? Send your dog.
Go! Winston, sit!
High.
Jump!
Finish. Exercise finished.
Yes.
The exercise will begin with the dog and handler at one end of the ring at a point designated by the judge. Prior to the exercise starting, the
Are you
handler
ready?
can indicate to the dog where it is being sent. The judge will ask the handler, "Are you ready?" If the handler is ready, he or she will respond to the affirmative. If the handler is not ready, they should respond no and resolve whatever issue they might be having. The handler will either indicate that they are ready or wait for the judge to ask again. Once the handler has indicated that they are ready, the judge will order, "Send your dog." This is the
Send your
first
dog.
order. On the
Go.
judge's order, the handler will command and/or signal the
Winston,
dog
sit.
to go forward at a brisk trot or gallop to a point about 20 feet past the jumps in the approximate center of the unobstructed end of the ring. When the dog reaches this point, the handler will give a command for the dog to sit. The dog must stop and sit with its attention on the handler, but need not sit squarely. As a note, the handler can use any verbal command to have the dog sit. It need not be in English or use any particular term. The judge will then order and indicate which jump the dog is to take.
Jump!
The judge will order far
Jump!
or high. All teams will get the same orders. On
Jump!
the handler's signal and/or command, the dog will go directly to the jump over it without touching it, and return to the handler. It must stop in the front position close enough to be touched on the head without excessive reaching, bending, or moving of the feet.
Finish.
Upon an order from the judge, finish. The handler will command or signal the handler to finish the dog. The judge will then state, "Exercise finished." The handler then may release the dog. The process is then repeated for the other jump, with the judge standing on the opposite jump side of the ring. Signaling in the directed jumping exercise is much the same as other exercises. Prior to the exercise beginning, the handler may point or otherwise indicate to the dog the spot to which the dog is to go. Because the exercise is yet to begin, the manner that this is done is not prescribed. Pointing with either hand or bending to bring the hand down to the dog's eye level, movement of the feet are all without penalty. Once the handler indicates that they are ready, the signaling is regulated by Chapter 2. Several processes can occur without penalty. In giving a signal, the handler may either bend or stand naturally. If a signal is to be used with a command, the signaling arm and hand may either swing as the command to go is given, or point and pause at the end of the signal. Again, the command to go out is given simultaneously. After the command and/or signal, the handler must return to the natural position. Once the dog is sitting and the judge gives the order to specify which jump to take, the handler will give a command and/or signal directing the dog to the correct jump. This signal is to involve the hand and arm on one side of the handler's body only. The typical signal is to extend the hand and arm to indicate the correct jump. When using any signal, it must be a single gesture, and at its completion, return to the natural position. While no additional body language is permitted, it is natural to have the eyes focus on the place to which one is pointing, therefore turning the head and looking at the jump while giving the signal is considered natural. Any other movement may be considered as an additional signal. When giving the signal, it may be accompanied by a verbal command. No specific words are required, and the dog's name may be used immediately preceding the command. We will now discuss scoring the directed jumping exercise. In scoring any exercise, the regulations in Chapter 2, Section 2 require the judge to carry a mental picture of a theoretically perfect performance for each exercise and score each dog and handler against this standard. This perfect picture must comply with these regulations and shall combine the utmost in willingness, enjoyment, and precision on the part of the dog with naturalness, gentleness, and smoothness on the part of the handler. Remember that penalties are always determined by applying the requirements of the regulations against the degree of discrepancy from the regulations. In other words, a small deviation from the requirements of the regulations would result in a minor penalty. However, a greater deviation might result in as much as an NQ. We have included video examples of errors that would be penalized. In order to illustrate the penalties presented here, many of the situations shown are staged. These images are not reflective of any of the team's normal performances. Our volunteers were kind enough to allow us to record training or to stage errors to enhance the viewer's understanding. As we examine the scoring requirements of the regulations, keep in mind that the judge is using their experience, training, judgment, and the word and spirit of the regulations in order to assign any penalty necessary. The regulations provide scoring guidelines, but beyond required NQs do not specify any specific penalty for a violation. The following errors are those that would likely result in a non-qualifying score. The dog anticipates the handler's command and/or signal to go out. The dog must await the handler's direction to go out. The dog is to sit in heel position until the judge orders the handler, "Send your dog." The dog leaving its place without direction would result in a score of NQ.
Are you ready? Ready. Send your dog. Go! Sit!
The dog fails to leave the handler after the command and/or signal is given. When receiving a command and/or signal from the handler, the dog must leave its place and travel to the opposite end of the ring. This must occur on the first command or signal from the handler. Failure to do so will result in a score of NQ. The dog does not go out between the jumps. After receiving a command and/or signal from the handler, the dog must go to the opposite end of the ring between the two jumps. Should the dog take a jump on the way out or go around the jumps on the outside, it will be scored as a non-qualifying score. The dog does not stop and remain at least 10 feet past the jumps. Should the dog leave its place as commanded and go out, it must go 10 feet beyond the jumps. Should the dog go beyond this point and the handler give it a sit command, it must sit and stay until directed further. Should the dog turn and return towards the handler to a point closer than 10 feet past the jumps, it will be scored as a non-qualifying score.
Mark, please. Ready. Mark, go out!
The dog anticipates the handler's command and/or signal to jump. Once the dog has been commanded to sit, it must remain in place until commanded or signaled to jump. Should the dog anticipate the handler's command and/or signal to jump, it will be scored as an NQ. The dog takes the wrong jump. When commanded or signaled to jump the jump as ordered by the judge, the dog must take the indicated jump. Should the dog take the wrong jump, whether by mistake or through the handler's miscommunication, it will be scored as an NQ. The dog knocks the bar off of the uprights or supports. In response to the handler's command and/or signal, the dog will approach the jump at a brisk pace or gallop and jump the jump. Should the dog strike the jump and cause the panel or bar to fall, it will be scored as an NQ. The dog uses the top of the jump as an aid in getting over the jump. The dog must jump the jump in such a fashion that it completely clears the jump. The dog is not to use the top of the jump as an aid in clearing the jump. Regardless of whether or not the jump is dislodged, this will be scored as an NQ. This is a rare occurrence. The dog fails to return to the handler. The jumping portion of the exercise is essentially a recall with an obstacle to be jumped. As in the novice recall, the dog must go to the handler and sit in front close enough for the handler to touch the dog's head without excessive reaching, bending, or moving of the feet. The handler gives an additional command or signal to jump. Once the judge has ordered the jump, bar, or high, the handler may signal which jump the dog is to take along with a verbal command to jump. Should the handler give an additional command or signal, the score would be NQ. The handler holds their signal to jump for an extended period. Once the judge has ordered the jump, bar, or high, the handler may signal which jump the dog is to take along with a verbal command to jump. Should the dog not move towards the jump, the handler might inappropriately hold their signal to encourage the dog to jump. This would be scored as a minor to NQ depending upon how long the signal is held.
Buoy go out. Buoy set. Jump.
The handler inappropriately signals the dog to go out. In giving the direction to go out, the handler may bend their body and knees in order for their hand to be at the dog's eye level. Once their hand has stopped moving, they must send the dog using a command only. Extending the arm at this point would constitute a second signal. This would be scored as an NQ.
Go.
The following handler or dog errors would be considered worthy of a minor or substantial penalty. Each of these would be applied depending upon the amount of deviation from the requirements of the regulation. The dog doesn't stop on command. The dog is required to stop and sit when commanded by the handler. Should the dog continue to move after the sit command, it would be scored as a minor or substantial penalty. If the dog continues to move after the sit command is given and an additional sit command then is given, it would be scored as an NQ. If the dog stops but does not sit and is then given an additional sit command, it is scored as a no sit and an additional command to sit. This warrants 2 substantial penalties. The handler is to sit the dog in the approximate center of the ring 20 feet past the jumps. Should the dog sit elsewhere, a penalty will be applied. The penalty depends on how far the dog sits from the intended place. In other words, the approximate center of the ring, 20 feet past the jumps.
Winston, sit.
It is suggested in the regulations and by AKC companion events that judges use a grid system for scoring the dog's place whenever it sits for the go out. With the correct place being the center of the ring, 20 feet past the jumps, penalties begin with the dog sitting at the ring barrier. The closer to the jumps and the further off center, the more points are deducted. The dog must go directly to the opposite end of the ring and sit on the handler's command. The dog is to be stopped by the handler's command and not the ring barrier. Sniffing or contacting the ring gate stanchion or the ring gating is scoreable. A minor or substantial penalty should be applied. Also note that sitting at the ring barrier is scoreable.
Come on. Sit. Come on.
The handler uses body language to encourage the dog to jump. According to the regulations, any position of the arms and hands and movements of the head and/or body that aid the dog will be considered additional signals. Handlers must attend to their body language when training and trialing. Body language is scoreable as minor or substantial, not excluding NQ.
Jump.
The handler turns to face the dog before or after it jumps. The handler may turn to face the dog while it is in midair, but once it has landed, the handler must maintain his or her position. Likewise, the handler may not turn before the dog jumps. These would call for a minor or substantial deduction.
Barkley, look.
Come on, Barkley.
Ready. Barkley, go out. Barkley, jump. Barkley, jump.
A dog that anticipates the handler's command to sit. Dogs that understand an exercise might sometimes act independently of the handler and perform without a command or signal. Anticipation is scoreable and is worthy of a minor or substantial penalty.
Jumping part 2. Are you ready? Ready. Thank you, dog. That's it. All right. Jump. Finish. Exercise.
The dog fails to go out at a brisk trot or gallop. The regulations require the dog to go out at a brisk trot or gallop. Depending upon the degree, this would warrant a minor or substantial penalty. Walking halfway might result in a 3-point penalty, while walking all the way might call for a penalty of 5 points. The dog touches a jump. This typically is an issue when the dog is jumping and ticks or hits part of the jump while going over. A tick is generally scored as a half a point, while hitting the jump without dislodging the bar or panel would be worthy of a 1-point penalty. The dog must go directly to and jump the jump without hesitation. When sent, the dog must go directly to the jump and jump it. Any avoidance or reluctance to jump is scoreable. Stutter jumping is sometimes a sign of a vision problem and should be addressed by the handler. Reluctance to jump can be a sign of orthopedic issues and again should be addressed by the handler's vet. It is important to remember that penalties assigned by the judge may exceed those described in the regulations should the error be greater than would normally be seen. Further, penalties for lack of control or lack of teamwork are assigned based upon common judging practice. This concludes our program. Please, before you leave, click the like button and then subscribe. It helps us with the channel. And we'd like to see you again.